The Philadelphia 76ers championship window is right now, and they cannot afford to waste this season. I'm here to break down two primary reasons why, starting with the impressive performance of Joel Embiid last night, the historic performance that we were able to see, the 70-point game, as well as something else going on in the Eastern Conference that the Sixers might want to pay attention to and change their mindset slightly. Now, before I fully dive into it, I do want to make sure you guys are smashing that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 80.2% of you guys have not subscribed to the channel just yet. Appreciate the 19% of you guys that have hit that button, but we got to keep this Sixers Digest family growing. There are some big plans right here for the channel and some big things going on the court with the Philadelphia 76ers, and that starts front and center with the performance of Joel Embiid. Last night against the San Antonio Spurs, Joel Embiid had one of the most impressive performances that we have ever seen from a Philadelphia 76ers player ever. He finished the game with 70 points, 18 rebounds, with 9 of them being offensive boards, 5 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, shot 21 of 41 from the field. He set a career high and Sixers franchise record for points in the game. It was an absolutely special night of basketball from an all-time great player. I was especially lucky to be inside the building and witness that one in person. I was there with my guy, shout out RB Philly Take, checking out things inside the building. So very cool. And I did want to play this final moment that I took here of Embiid leaving the court to some showers of MVP and everything that went through it here.
T-ball call comes in for number 21, Joel Embiid. With a franchise record of 70 points.
Now, this is the type of performance that will be remembered in the history books forever. But this is also a season by Joel Embiid that will be remembered in the history books forever. That not only is the 70 points ridiculous, and to do it against Victor Wembanyama in front of the home crowd, to have a moment like that, to become the 9th player in NBA history to score 70 points in a game, the only player in NBA history to have 70 points, 15 plus rebounds, and 5 plus assists. That list starts and ends with Joel Hans Embiid. And to put the whole season in perspective, a couple things. For starters, we know that he won MVP last year, and he absolutely should be the front runner for MVP this year. That if he plays enough games, there should be zero doubt that he adds a second MVP to his award section of that resume for him. But also, when you look at the stats for this season, that after winning MVP last year, Joel Embiid is averaging more points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks on fewer minutes per game compared to last season. That just does not happen. And to put something else into the matter of fact for history, take a look at this right here, that on the season, Joel Embiid has scored 1,156 points, and he has played just 1,096 minutes. His 38.0 points per 36 minutes and 1.055 points per minute both ranked first in NBA history. That is not across the NBA this season. That is not across the past decade. That is in the history of the NBA and the sport of basketball. No one has scored at a higher level than Joel Embiid. It does not get better than this. Now, when we talk about the championship window, it felt like there was not quite the same hype for this Sixers team coming into the season. There was even the talk during the uncertainty with James Harden in the offseason about this being a potential gap year before they attack free agency. And I'm here to say that any sort of that conversation must stop now. That Joel Embiid is too good, that any single night he can put this team on his back, and he is up there having one of the best performances, one of the best individual seasons of any player ever. That right now, I've never seen a player play at this level. That I ask you to drop down in the comments and tell me if I'm wrong, but I have never seen a player be the most important player both on the offensive end and the defensive end of the team. That you look around the league, you look at other stars. If you want to throw Giannis, Dame Lillard is the better offensive player there. Jokic, Aaron Gordon is the better defensive player there. Anthony Davis, LeBron, those guys each have overlapping strengths and weaknesses, or they complement each other on the other sides of the floor. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, you can name all you want. None of those guys have the same two-way impact that Joel Embiid does, and it's clear that the team is benefiting because of it. Now, the other side of things that I did want to bring up here is the other changes going on in the Eastern Conference. That we had some surprising news coming out of the Milwaukee Bucks in which Adrian Griffin was fired as their head coach. And not only this, but Doc Rivers is a top Milwaukee target to replace Adrian Griffin, but the sides have yet to talk. The Bucks are expected to reach out and gauge his interest soon. Now, the more that comes out, the more reports, it does seem to be trending towards that direction of Doc Rivers being the guy that will take over the sticks as the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I can tell you right now, from watching Doc Rivers coach this Sixers team for the past 3 seasons, that is not the guy to take you over the championship hump. We have seen that front and center in Philadelphia, that Doc Rivers does not have the necessary chops to have the X's and O's at this point in time in this state of the NBA. There was once a time where Doc Rivers was a high-level NBA coach, but that was decades ago at this point. And just looking at this, as I give a credit to Joel Embiid for all the steps forward that he has taken this season, a lot of that is a credit to Nick Nurse for getting more out of him, for putting him in positions to succeed, to having different layers of the offense. For the playmaking specifically, we're going to talk about he plateaued at 4.2 assists over the past 2 seasons. He's averaging over 6 assists per game, in the top 20 in the NBA for assists per game for Joel Embiid. That is in a large part due to Nick Nurse, that him having available passes for Joel Embiid to capitalize on and play make with. That under Doc Rivers, it was the stale offense of Joel Embiid at the elbow and everybody standing still and watching. Or it was the two-man game with James Harden and Joel Embiid, and you either knew you were getting the pick and roll or it was a James Harden isolation. That is not the offense this year. That there is down screens, there's back cuts, there's movement off ball. There are passes that are being made by Joel that elevates the team as a whole and has elevated his game as well. And that for the first time throughout really the Joel Embiid era, we have a coaching advantage for the Sixers on a night in and night out basis. I have been blown away by Nick Nurse. Even you look at every single time out they come back on the floor with a different defensive formation, whether they're switching to a 1-3-1 zone, going back to man, picking up full court. There's constantly changes going on throughout the game. That is rare to see quite to this extent. So as the Bucks now shift gears and put Doc Rivers in as head coach, and I will make a nice little side note here that I'm not saying I thought Adrian Griffin was the guy. Frankly, I've been very underwhelmed by what he's done as the head coach, but we're still calling it and pulling the plug and cutting the leash at this point in the season, which is quite shocking to me. I do think there needed to be change last year when they were bounced out of the first round by the Miami Heat. I understand the Heat obviously popped off, went to the NBA Finals, and went on a hot run, got hot at the right time. Jimmy Butler playing one of the highest levels of any player I've ever seen. But it still comes with repercussions that the Bucks had the best overall record in the NBA, and they were unable to make it past the first round last year. And by the way, this is the same Miami Heat team that did not even win in the play-in tournament, that they lost the first play-in game to even have to put themselves in a position to play the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks. So to have them taken down like that is quite shocking, and there had to be repercussions with the firing there. Then hiring Adrian Griffin, it is a difficult task as a first-year head coach, a first-time head coach that he has not had that NBA head coaching experience to have championship expectations. That is really difficult. Now, granted, sometimes it works, and Nick Nurse is a prime example that in his first opportunity as a head coach and in his first location as a head coach up in Toronto, he did take that team to a championship. But Nick Nurse is one of one. Adrian Griffin is not special, and neither is Doc Rivers. That with Doc Rivers now being the guy that is going to have to scheme against the Sixers team, Nick Nurse is going to absolutely dominate that. That I see such a clean route for the Sixers team that if they can have a postseason matchup with the Milwaukee Bucks, I feel great about that. That Nick Nurse is going to be coaching circles again around Doc Rivers. But this brings me back to the point that with these factors going on, both internally with the leaps forward that Joel Embiid is taking, with the right positioned role players surrounding this roster, with the continued progress of Tyrese Maxey, and then the external factors when we talk about the Milwaukee Bucks clearly not being on the same page, that they're going to have to try and run a whole new offensive and defensive scheme under Doc Rivers now, that they're going to have to try and figure things out on the fly, and frankly, they've been very underwhelming from a defensive standpoint, in a way that they just frankly should not be this season. The Celtics are a different story, and the team that is obviously the ultimate hurdle for it. But now I think it's the Sixers and the Celtics as the top 2 contenders in the East. That I think the Milwaukee Bucks just took themselves out of that category with all this uncertainty, all this drama, and frankly, I can't tell you a time where I've seen it lead to postseason success in this type of midseason change for a coach. That you rarely, for a coach, it's pretty essential to have, training camp, preseason, have time to lay the groundwork for expectations for the team. The Bucks are going to have to absolutely bank on Damian Lillard and Giannis catching lightning in a bottle to have any sort of postseason success. And on the contrast, the Sixers continue to get better and better. That we hear from Nick Nurse that they still don't have even all their sets in place, that they continue to build and build and build, add more and more to the playbook on both sides of the ball, and each of these guys are getting better. So as we approach this NBA trade deadline, it is absolutely time for the Sixers to push their chips in the middle, go all in, and do whatever it takes to compete for a championship. That this team has the bones, It has the opportunity, and they are good enough to go for it. That Daryl Morey has been on record in past years of saying that if you have a 5% chance or better of winning a championship, you have to go for it that season. Well, I think the Sixers are significantly above that margin. I do not think that they are a far cry from the greatest contenders of the East, and when you have greatest contenders of the entire league, and when you have a player the caliber of Joel Embiid's just magnitude as a player, you cannot afford to waste it. You cannot afford to take a year in which you do not give him every available option to take this team to a championship. Joel Embiid obviously has his playoff shortcomings. Those are things that he has to wear at this point in time. But you're only a loser, or you're not a winner until you are one. That Giannis had the same exact accusations until he took his team to a championship. Nikola Jokic had the same exact accusations until he took his team to a championship. It feels like Joel Embiid's turn, that he has taken his game to another level. If he continues to do that on the biggest stage, he goes down as an all-time great, and the Sixers team can win a championship. That is what I want to happen, and it is up to Daryl Morey to do everything possible to make sure this roster is equipped for that type of run. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hit me up with any trade thoughts that you have or guys that you want me to dive into deeper here on the channel. We will continue to be churning out content surrounding that. And thank you to Joel Embiid for being the lifeblood of this franchise. Once again, thanks so much. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.